We are less than 2 weeks away from the 2026 NFL Draft, actually less than 10 days away. And on today's show, I figured I'd bring you my newest, latest Jacksonville Jaguars mock draft. This is 5.0 for us here at Jags Now, so hopefully you guys enjoy. And without any further ado, we're going to get into today's show. This is Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Cullen Brown. If you need a little reminder of the Jacksonville Jaguars draft picks, they are as follows. No first-round picks, obviously due to the Travis Hunter trade, but you do have a second-round pick at number 56 overall, 3 third-round picks at 81, 88, and 100 respectively, 1 fourth-round pick at 124 overall, 164, 166 in the 5th round, 203 in the 6th, and then you've got 3 7th-round picks at 233, 240, and 245 for 11 total draft picks. So a lot of movement, a lot of draft picks are going to be made in this episode of Jags Now. But before we get into it, guys, we got a little AFC South battle, a little sub-battle going on between us and Colts Talk. I don't even know what Billy Beebe's doing up there in Cincy half the time. I mean, he's crazy, but he wanted to do this sub-battle during the month of April, and they're kind of kicking our butts right now, 57-90. We can't let that slide. If you guys want to take down Colts Talk, hit that subscribe button for all Jaguars content all year long, not just the draft, not just during the season. We've got you covered for the entire 12 months of the calendar year. So make sure you guys hit that sub button. All right, we're starting this mock draft off with a trade. With 11 draft picks and you're coming off a 13-win season, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Jacksonville Jaguars could say, hey, we're going to take one of our third-round picks and try to move up in the second round, which is what I have the Jaguars doing right here. Moving up to 43 overall, with the Miami Dolphins sitting in the back 56th, and then pick number 100. If there is a crop of players that the Jaguars like, I do think this is a viable strategy. And I know Liam Coen and James Gladstone said, we come from the Rams, we don't mind waiting. Just don't rule out James Gladstone potentially trading up. I'm just throwing that out there. And with picking the number 43rd spot in the NFL mock draft simulator, I went with Jake Golday, the linebacker out of Cincinnati, who I really like in this draft kind of process. We haven't really talked about him as a potential linebacker option. He is 6'4", 240 pounds, originally played at Central Arkansas at edge before making the conversion to Cincinnati, where he lined up in linebacker. He actually lined up in the slot and was trusted to guard up the seam against not only just tight ends, but also slot wide receivers themselves, and really is a do-it-all athlete. I mean, you see the numbers on your screen, 105 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups. I mean, he is just a guy that's all over the field, and really is more of a straight line runner, not the greatest in terms of having fluid hips, but once he gets going in a hurry. And he's not afraid to get after the quarterback. As I mentioned, he's a previous edge from Central Arkansas. And I do believe he would be an interesting Devin Lloyd replacement. And I don't know necessarily if the Jaguars are going to use their second-round pick at linebacker, depending on where they like guys in this certain range. But if they do, look at Jake Golday as a potential option. I know we've talked about Anthony Hill, some other guys in this process. I mean, Josiah Trotter, potentially out of the University of Missouri. But Jake Golday, if he is the selection on day 2 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Jags fans get hyped about this one because I think he's a really intriguing prospect who, if some NFL defensive coordinator, Anthony Campanelli, can really hone in his skills, I think the sky's the limit for the former Cincinnati Bearcat. But I want you guys to get down below in the comment section. Doesn't have to be a specific player or a specific position. Fill in the blank. The Jaguars will draft blank in the 2026 NFL Draft. Could be a player, could be a position. I want to hear from you guys down below in the comment section. All right, so now that we're moving in to round number 3, I thought we'd go with another position, another player that we hadn't really discussed much about, and that's Joshua Josephs out of the University of Tennessee. Smaller edge rusher at 6'3", 240 pounds. He is a guy who, we'll talk about this more here in a second, does a lot of really good things despite his lack of size in terms of a traditional NFL defense at 6'3", 240 pounds. Our own Tom Downey has his own kind of scouting report here at Chat Sports on Joshua Josephs. In fact, he covers all of the NFL draft prospects. But let's specifically look at what he had to say about Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee. He has incredible length with bursts to develop some speed to power success, which is always key for an edge rusher. Better run defender than you might think, given his size. He graded out really well. But he lacks a pass rush plan beyond his quickness. And that can be a problem for young pass rushers, that they rely too much on their athletic abilities, but they don't necessarily develop kind of an arsenal needed to go up against some of the elite offensive tackles in the National Football League. But in a third round position, I think Joshua Josephs, if nothing else, is a good run setting edge, again, for his size, and somebody that can give you pass rush production. 4 sacks last year on 31 pressures. This is the stat that kind of really blew me away. When it comes to pass rush win rate, he had a 21.3% win rate in that statistic. Also with an 8.2 run stop rate. Those numbers, like if you have over 20% pass rush win rate, historically during the NFL draft and prospects that go on to play in the National Football League, that is something you are head over heels for. Combine that with an 8.2 run stop rate, which is one of the higher out of all edge prospects. I think Joshua Josephs is going to be a slept-on edge that I wouldn't mind if the Jaguars looked at in round 3. Speaking of the defensive line, Darrell Jackson Jr., the Seminole, as producer Reed is alluding to off camera. I think he's somebody who is an NFL body already in terms of his size at 6'5", 337 pounds, would be kind of that natural run-stop gap that can kind of plug the running holes in the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line, and they need to get younger at that spot. Let's hear from Tom Downey and what he thinks about Darrell Jackson Jr. Great size and frame with one of the longest wingspans ever for a defensive tackle. Yeah, he's got crazy long wingspan. Traits outweigh impact right now, but has untapped ability, especially as a run stop. I mean, this guy is a physical freak. No real pass rush impact outside of 2024. He did take a slight dip in 2025, as you see on screen, only 1 sack last year, and there's not a lot of great defensive tackle pass rush kind of combinations in this 2026 draft class, but when you look at the Jaguars defensive line group, I do agree that Eric Armstead and Devon Hamilton are guys that you want in your defensive tackle room next year. Will they look to pivot off of one of those guys with a post-June 1st cut? I don't know. I don't think Devon Hamilton you would do that, but maybe Eric Armstead. But the bottom line is you need to get younger at the defensive tackle spot if you're Jacksonville. You did bring back Mac Dickerson, but all those guys, including Devon Hamilton, are 29 years or older. And I think if you bring in a guy like Darrell Jackson Jr., he'd be a really nice addition for the Jaguars defense. And again, I think it's a position they will address on day 2, but we'll ultimately see at what spot they ultimately address defensive tackle. Here's a fun one. Now getting into round number 4 at number 124 overall. How about a guy in Sam Roush, the tight end out of Stanford? I know we're expecting Britton Strange to potentially get an extension here shortly from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sam Roush, I think, would be a very nice compliment to Britton Strange. You look at his career numbers at the college football level, and they've slowly increased over time. Obviously, didn't play as much as a freshman. As a sophomore, got a little bit more run. In 2024, he kind of took another step forward. And in 2025, had over 500 receiving yards. Again, 7 drops is not something you love out of a tight end, but I do think that he's got all the tools to really kind of bring it together in terms of an NFL tight end. And our own Tom Downey, again, with the scouting report here, says this. Tons of inline work that translates to the NFL. I agree. He's got some stuff that can translate not only as a pass catcher, but also as a blocker. Tough player who was asked and willing to do a lot as a blocker. Tantalizing size and athletic ability, but it did not translate to production. To me, Sam Roush, when it comes to the tight end class that we have here in front of us, obviously Kenyon Sadiq is the clear round 1 target that could be a generational prospect out of this entire group. But you're looking at guys like Eli Stowers, Oscar Delp that we've talked about, Sam Roush. Like, there's a bunch of guys, Max Clare out of Ohio State. Thank you, producer Reed. Like, there's a lot of guys in this draft class that people are going to try to decide who's tight end 2, who's going to be tight end 3. It would not shock me if Sam Roush is the best guy out of this crop. I think he's a guy that has untapped potential, and if you get him in a Liam Coen offense, I think only the best can be unlocked for him. And I'd be really just hinting at this. I really do think the Jaguars, just based on kind of their draft visits that they've had, they've taken a certain interest to this draft class, and wouldn't be surprised if they add to this tight end room before the 2026 NFL season. All right, moving more into day 3 now, where I'll be honest, I'm not sure if J.C. Davis will last to round 5, but I was able to scoop him in this mock draft. And if you're Jacksonville on the offensive line, yes, you're looking for more kind of offensive tackle depth behind your 2 starters in Cole Van Lannon and Anton Harrison. But I think J.C. Davis has the ability to play really like 4 different spots on the offensive line. If you don't believe me, Dane Brugler of The Athletic had this to say in regards to J.C. Davis. Davis is a stocky, strong blocker with smooth movements and a basic understanding of how to create leverage using his length. Leverage is so key for young offensive linemen. It's something that they can just sometimes forget whenever it comes to the basics of offensive line play, and Davis has it. With continued tweaks to his game, he could offer an NFL offense quality depth at either tackle or guard. That versatility is something that you just do not get often whenever it comes to draft prospects. And I think J.C. Davis, if you add him to this depth chart for the Jacksonville Jaguars, again, you have your kind of starters in place with Cole Van Lanen, Anton Harrison, Ezra Cleveland, Patrick McCarry, Robert Hainsey. Those guys are all expected to be and probably should be your starters. And I do like Jonah Monheim and Wyatt Milam as kind of backup interior options. But man, if you plug this guy in behind Cole Van Lanen, whether you keep Walker Little or not, I'm not sure if Walker Little will be a trade or cut candidate. We'll ultimately kind of see. I'm over the Chuma Edoga experience. I think you're really cooking with gas in the offensive line if you're Jacksonville. Let's go to another pick here on day number 3. We've got Nick Barrett, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina. You just want more depth and you want more youth. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars either double dip at defensive tackle or edge. I went with defensive tackle in this kind of draft, and I think Nick Barrett, again, another big mauling defensive tackle, not going to give you the greatest production in terms of pass rush ability. It's just not available in this draft, to be honest, outside of like Caleb Banks, but he's got obviously the foot injury that's concerning a lot of people. That doesn't mean Nick Barrett can't give you quality depth at the defensive tackle spot. 9 pressures, did have a fumble recovery, did have a touchdown last year for South Carolina. So I do think there's a lot to like there. And again, on day 3, you're looking for guys that can kind of contribute, maybe push some other guys for a DT4, maybe DT3 spot. I think Nick Barrett can absolutely do that. Moving on to round number 6, where we've got a running back. I don't know if the Jaguars are going to add one in the 2026 draft, but Le'Veon Moss would certainly be a hell of a case if the Jaguars want to add a running back. He is a guy who he has one of the best stiff arms in the entire draft. He is a physical specimen that can run fast, run through you. He's not afraid of contact. Does have a little bit of an injury history and needs to improve his kind of third down game in terms of not only pass protection, but also just catching out of the backfield in general. But when you think about the Jaguars running back depth chart, obviously Bashal Tutin is in line, along with Chris Rodriguez, I'd say, to get the lion's share of the carries next season for Jacksonville. We know how Liam Coen will kind of sit there and, balance between the running backs. I think Chris Rodriguez and Bashal Tutin will have the bulk of the carries. LaQuint Allen will be there in kind of a pass protection role. And if you bring in a Le'Veon Moss, I do think he could be somebody that pushes LaQuint Allen at RB3. But I think that this could be also a room that Jacksonville says, you know what, we're okay. We will keep it here, and that just will be kind of the room that we go into 2026 with. But if they don't, look at day 3 more for a running back target, and look at a guy like Le'Veon Moss to be potentially added into that room. Going on to the 7th round picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we'll just go rapid fire here as they are the kind of final picks of this mock draft. Eric Rivers, who didn't have the greatest year last year for the Georgia Tech University, and he transferred in from a lower level Conference USA team. I want to say it was Florida Atlantic. He did a really good job there at Florida Atlantic, then transferred to Georgia Tech. Didn't have the greatest year, but I still think he's got physical capabilities. I think he ran like a 4.3, 4.4 40. So somebody that you could add to the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver room. Andre Fuller, again, graded out really well per PFF. I think that behind kind of your core 4 in your cornerback position, I think that Andre Fuller could be a name that could compete for some depth spot or depth snaps, and then also maybe contribute on special teams. So I added him also. And then with your final pick in the 7th round, I went with Ethan Burke, the edge out of Texas, who I think that, edge could be also a position kind of similar how I mentioned earlier that the Jaguars double dip at to look to add in the 2026 NFL draft. And I think Ethan Burke could be somebody that you add alongside Danny Strigo to begin to potentially push for defensive end 4 or 3. So that is the conclusion of the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of mock draft that I have for you today. Just to round up, Jake Golday, Joshua Josephs, Darrell Jackson Jr., Sam Roush, J.C. Davis, Nick Barrett, Le'Veon Moss, Eric Rivers, Andre Fuller, and Ethan Burke. Red pen time for you guys. Grade this mock draft. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know how I did in the comments section below. And again, feel free to also just let me know your prediction in terms of who the Jaguars, whether it's a player or position, you think is going to be in Duval County for 2026. And that is going to conclude this episode of Jags Now presented by Chat Sports. We will be back probably with some more draft content as we are kind of gearing up these last 10 or so days before the actual 2026 NFL Draft, where we will have you covered here on the channel. So make sure you guys subscribe. And until next time, guys, peace out.